Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast today. Today, our guest is June K. Collins. She is a master NLP practitioner and coach. In 2012, she lost her son, Kaleb, and found herself hitting rock bottom and not understanding how to rebuild her life without her son. During this time, she found a passion with the mind and how individuals react to trauma. Through her own experience and education, she now helps other women rebuild and find purpose in their life too. Thank you, June, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so first, my condolences for the loss of your son. And as we talked at the beginning, I know you lost your mom within the year as well. So my condolences to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So do you want to talk about the personal stuff first or the professional stuff? I'll leave it to you.
we can get right into it if you want. Like the professional stuff, I'm just like, yeah, it's part of it. But so basically with my professional, I help women that have lost children. And basically I help them to find purpose back in their life because the purpose was their child. And then I also, just help them rebuild their life, because when you lose a child, basically your life is totally flipped upside down and you're not the same person you were before. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do kind of professionally. And so that's kind of what I do. But as for my son, back in 2009, I decided that I was going to actually have a child. I was the woman that was like, I'm career oriented. I want to, have all these great things. I want to go to school and to college and master's degrees and everything like that. So, but in 2009, actually my grandfather died. And I was like, you know what, or 2008, he died. Maybe I need to have kids because my parents aren't going to be able to see kids. So that started my journey on, I'm going to have a child. And in 2009, after a really complicated pregnancy, I ended up having a complete placental abruption. And when I had that complete placental abruption, he had a lot of complications from that. Obviously, like they didn't catch it at first, and I had lost 3.5 pints of blood, and he was not breathing. And they did revive him. And long story short, he was in the NICU for 3.5 weeks at Grady in Atlanta, Georgia. And then he came home with us, but he had a lot of special needs. He had cerebral palsy, microcephaly, he had cortical blindness, just a lot of different things that were going on with him. And so we finally got into like a routine with Kaleb. He had a seizure disorder too. So we got into, that with him, got into a good routine. And then in 2012, he had a feeding tube. So every backstory, he had a feeding tube. So in the middle of the night, we would have to wake up and put more food in it because we couldn't feed him a lot at one time because it would make him sick. So we would get up during the middle of the night, and my husband at the time and myself would take turns. We called it like a shift work. And so he was actually doing it that night. And I woke up to him screaming at like 4:00 in the morning. And I asked him kind of, what's wrong, what's going on? And he said, Kaleb's not breathing. So where we live, I went downstairs and I threw down dialed 911 and I threw the phone down because it was actually a house phone. And I went into his room and started CPR. Kind of backstory, where we live, if you dial 911, the police come. If you don't answer the phone or anything, the police are coming. So I knew the police were coming. And I went into his room and I grabbed him off his bed and I started CPR on him. And I did CPR on him until the paramedics got there, and they took him to the hospital, where he ended up passing away that night. And that started my child loss journey with Kaleb.
Yeah. Oof. And okay, how has your marriage done since then? Like, what I know as a therapist, marriages often get closer after a loss of child, or they have a tremendous amount of strain. And I know there's gray areas where it could be a little bit of both, but are the two of you doing okay?
We actually got divorced. I was in the
Uh,
we were in the percentage that got divorced, but we were having issues before because of all the trauma and stuff with Caleb and all of his special needs. There was already a strain there. We both, and being a therapist, you understand this, that we had both different idea about how we wanted to move forward with Caleb having special needs. I was more of the person that was, hey, let's see what he can do. And he was more of the person, well, the doctors said he can't do that. So, I don't want to push him too hard and hurt him. And I was the person, obviously, let's see if he can do it. Let's not just say he can't do it. So there was a strain there with our marriage. And then after Caleb passed away, there was kind of a strain there. Like I was the person that didn't want anything to do with anybody. And I just kind of wanted to be closed off to myself. I reverted back to my introverted ways. And he was more of the person that just wanted everybody to be around. And there was a lot of strain with that. But we did try, maybe 2 or 3 months after Caleb died, we were trying to work it out and trying to fix it. And we actually, during that time, we tried to get pregnant because we thought that would help. And I just never got pregnant, and we ended up getting divorced or finalizing the divorce. Mm-hmm.
okay. So your daughter, where does she fit in that picture? Are you remarried?
Yes, I am remarried.
Okay.
She came about as, I call her the oops. She was not expected. I mean, don't get me wrong, she was the best oops ever. But yeah, she came along in 2014. So I met my now husband in 2013. And we started dating and we got along really well. And yeah, she was kind of like an oops. And it was like, it's a sign. It's a sign. And so, and it was kind of perfect too, because I was like, God knew what he was doing. Obviously he
Mhm.
gave me a girl this time instead of another boy, so I couldn't compare them and
Mhm.
everything. So it was good. It was good. But that's where my daughter fits in with my new marriage. And we've been
Okay.
married since 2012. So, or
Okay.
13,
Well,
excuse me, 2013. Ah.
it's okay. The second after the second child, we get confused.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So would you say that losing Caleb was the worst trauma you've experienced in your life?
Yeah. He
Yeah.
definitely, losing him was the worst. The second worst was when he was born. That was really, really traumatic for me. And I explain it as in, it's like when you get pregnant, you have all these expectations for your child. They're going to be a football star, they're going to be so smart, and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And then when all of this happens and you find out that you have a special needs child and they're not going to be like a quote normal child, it's kind of that was really traumatic for me. It's not that I loved him any less, but basically that normal child died when I found out that he was going to be special needs.
Right.
And it was like, okay, well, he's not going to be this. This is what he's going to be. And it's just reframing your mind at, okay, now we need to follow this path instead of that path. And that was really traumatic for me. Yeah, that was really traumatic for me when he was so healthy, and then it was just like in a split second he wasn't. Oops, excuse me.
Right.
So that was the second, but the first was definitely obviously him passing away.
Right. Are you open or willing to tell us about your healing journey, what that looked like?
Yeah, yeah. So when he first passed away, like I said, I was really I did not want to do it. I wasn't eating. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to kind of close off to the world. And I had a miniature dachshund at the time, Katie. And, it was just me and her, and we just kind of chilled out upstairs and did our thing. And so so it was just me. And obviously during this time, the first few months, I ended up getting that divorce. I divorced Caleb's dad. And so basically I was by myself. And I had got to a point where it was just, I didn't want to do anything. I was just sitting at the house and I decided I wanted to go back to work. And, I went back to work really too soon. There's a lot of things that I can't remember that I did at that time because at the time I was working for a drug task force and I can't remember some of the things that we did. I can remember like the incident, yeah, we went and did a search warrant, but I can't remember what happened during it. So it was just like I was still in that fog. But for me, I was the type of person that I don't want to deal with grief and all the emotions with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make myself so busy that, I don't feel it, that I didn't have to feel it. So I went back to work. And then actually when Caleb died, I was in my last class and doing my last paper for my bachelor's degree. So I got an extension obviously and finished that class, but then I went back to work so I didn't have to deal with grieving. And then I thought it was a great idea to start my master's degree program at that time. And it was just a pattern with me that I thought, you know what, I don't want to deal with grieve. I don't want to grieve. I don't want to quote do this healing thing they're talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and fill up my day as much as I possibly can so I don't have to think about it. And I did that for a really, really long time. And then I can remember probably a year down the road sitting on the couch with my miniature dachshund Katie, and I was like, you know what, I'm so alone. And I was at rock bottom. I got to the point where I never physically wanted to kill myself, but I had this vision in my head where it was like, if something did happen to me, it would be okay because then I could go and be with Caleb. And, at the time I was like, yeah, I'm not suicidal or anything, but that's totally not the mindset to have. And that was
Right.
just, and I was doing so many things that could have got me hurt, could have got who I worked with hurt because I just didn't care, and then whenever something so traumatic happens, I would just sit and think about my life. My life is horrible. I haven't been the best person. I did all these bad things in my life and, my life is horrible. And, just the whole slew of things we tell ourselves. And it just kept going on and on and on until it was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. And then I can literally remember sitting on my couch just in my thoughts and saying, you know what, I don't want to live like this anymore. But although I didn't want to live like that anymore, I didn't know how to fix it. I went to one counseling session and I didn't like it because I was telling someone, and I'm an introvert. I'll go ahead and tell you I'm an introvert. And I didn't like telling a stranger that had never gone through child loss my story because I'm like, how in the world would you know? I mean, you have all these schools and all these degrees, but like you don't understand, And I didn't go to group sessions because again, I didn't like being in a group of people, and it was more of an anxiety thing for me as an introvert. So I didn't want to do that. So what I ended up doing, I was like, I still don't understand. I still don't know what to do. So what I ended up doing was starting to research everything. Because at the time I was in my master's degree program, and it was forensic psychology. It's my master's is what my master's is in. And, you start learning about the mind, and you're learning about the criminal mind, but you're learning about the mind and everything like that. And I was like, you know what, let me start learning about grief, the mind and grief, and what the mind does with grief. And that's where I started my upswing, because when I was reading and researching and doing all this stuff, I realized, wait a minute, what I'm feeling, these other women have felt. And that kind of started my research and my healing, and then after that, it was like, how are some women dealing with the healing and how is it working for them? What are some things that work for them? And, I would find these things that worked for some women and I would try them. And if it didn't work, then I would either tweak it a little bit or I would not do it again. And it just depends. It depends on each thing. And then if I was having a really bad day, what I would end up doing was I would sit down and I would analyze what is causing me to have this bad day. What has triggered me all of a sudden? Yesterday was a good day. Why is this day a bad day? And I would sit down and actually analyze what is going on, what in the world's going on. I had said an affirmation, and my affirmation was, I've already lived my worst day, and every day after that will be better than that day was. And today I still truly believe that there is absolutely no day in my life that's going to be as bad as that day was. And I will never feel the trauma that I felt that day again. So, when I started having those bad days, I would say my affirmation, and I would have to say it many, many, many times. And then I would, if was triggered by something, I would figure out what it was. And that's what kind of started me healing. And then I found the little things that help me when I'm in one of those gloomy moods or whatever. I'm the person that I try to figure out why I'm so gloomy, what it is that's making me in that mood. And then, like, one of the things that I do if I'm to reset my mind, I get on YouTube and I watch funny videos of just people doing crazy things, and that kind of resets my brain, and I go on. But it started where I would have bad weeks and bad days, and then it got to the point where now I know what I need to do, whether it's get up and walk or get out of my mind. I say get out of my mind because I'm very analytical, so I think about stuff all the time. Go for a walk or get on YouTube and find a funny video. I know what helps me now, but what helps me is not when I was going through and researching and doing all this stuff. What helps me is not what helps everybody else, and everybody's just so different. But I had to get to the point where, yes, that did not work, but I'm going to keep going. And I think a lot of people that are going through grief, they either don't make that decision that I'm not going to live like this anymore, or they try something, it doesn't work, and then they decide, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just going to live in my grief. And I just made that decision. I'm not going to do that anymore. And it was just slow and steady wins the race. And, now it's, he died in 2012. So what is that, 11 years now? And I still have my bad days. Everybody, you're always going to have your bad days, and I know the week before his death day and his birthday, I know I am going to be the worst person to be around. And I try to catch myself because I know it's coming up. But my whole mindset, even if I'm not thinking about it, your subconscious mind thinks about stuff constantly. And, if I catch myself doing it, I try to help. But there's different days of the week that some days, I get upset and I start crying, and it's just part of it, and I just try to figure out what that is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And did you mention that you were working on a book before we started recording?
Yeah. So I always wanted to write a book about my experience, and just a book for women. And obviously it's, I'm partial to child loss, but a book for women to let them know this is what I experienced, and you're not alone. And all you have to do is just make that decision to move forward, not know how to do it. Don't think about how to do it, but make that decision to move forward. So I wanted to write it for a really long time, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to be so raw and so open with everything that I experienced, because I left no stone unturned on everything that I went through and I thought of back then. But yeah, so about a year and a half ago, I started writing the book. And basically it's written where it tells my story and how I was feeling at the time and how they could possibly help themselves through that. And just to let them know that they're not alone in what they are feeling.
Is it finished?
Yeah, yes, it is finished. It's back from the editor. It's being formatted for paperback. And the goal was to get it released by Caleb's birthday, which is November 26th, but everything just ran so smooth. And that you can never say things run smooth, but it actually ran smooth. And the plan is to actually release it on June 16th, which is my birthday. And it's, kind of it's my 43rd birthday. And it's 12 years because he died in March and my birthday's in June. So it's exactly, my 12 years since he's been gone.
Okay. Well, by the time this episode will release, your book will be out. So can you tell us the name of it?
Yeah,
so we can find it?
My book is called Mama, You Don't Heal. And it will be available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. And I'm not sure at the time of this recording if it will, the audible will already be out, but the goal is to have the audio version of it as well for those, because it's a book that it gives you steps, but you can also listen to it, on your way to work, and maybe it'll give them more steps to try at work and just different things. But yeah, it would be a great one for audible too.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that writing this book also helped in your healing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always tell the people that I talk to with grief that there's 6 steps that you have to do when you're grieving, and it's you have to read it, you have to write it, you have to think it, you have to hear it, you have to speak it, and you have to live it. And obviously writing it kind of helped me release some things that I hadn't talked about since his passing. It was the feelings that I had and the things that I thought back at that time. It let me release that. Things that I didn't remember that I held on to. It helped me release that. And it always helps to, like I said, this 6 steps that I live by. I mean, you have to read it. You have to read your story. You have to think about it, and definitely writing it just kind of, you can release it. That's where I was at that point, and I'm not going to think about it anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to reading your book. I guess this question's been percolating in the back of my brain. I was just wondering at the timing of asking it. So I know that you have this NLP experience, and we've had other NLP practitioners on the podcast before, but for people who don't know what that means, can you give a little brief summary of that?
Yeah, basically NLP helps you reframe your mind. It's a mindset thing. The simple way to explain it is to figure out who you are and take what you believe, that your beliefs, morals, and values, know what they are, and basically change the way you think of things. And it can be something as simple as, and a lot of people say it, and I hear it a lot in grief, I will never get over my child loss, my mom dying, my dad dying, whatever it is. And it's changing that mindset to allow yourself to basically think of, okay, well, maybe I can. Maybe it's more of, I'll never get over them. Maybe it's not, I'll never get over them. Maybe it's, something as simple as, I'll always remember them. I'm always going to honor them. And like I tell women all the time that have lost a child, your child died. Yes, they died, but this is where their legacy begins. And it's my way of, kind of like the NLP way of saying, yes, this actually happened. I'm not going to try to hide that this happened, but we're going to take steps to make it more positive than negative. And it's basically, for the person on the outside, it's basically trying to get your brain and to think of, when you're thinking of something negative, think of something positive and replace the negative with the positive. Does that make sense? That's kind of, I try to explain it, break it down easily.
Well, I think the example of my having a legacy for my child, I think that's so empowering. and does a nice job of explaining what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking I'm never going to get over this keeps us stuck.
Yes.
Thinking I want to have a legacy for my child is empowering. Like, I'm going to take this horrible thing that happened to me and turn it into a blessing in some way. Like, what is his legacy? How can I honor my child or my loss? I think is really powerful.
Yeah,
So that's awesome.
I think people that have had a loss or let's just say a traumatic event in general, people feel that they need to hide that from the world. But what people don't realize, and I try to teach the women I talk to a lot, is, that traumatic event is going to make you who you are. It's going, and they don't want to hear it. You're going to be stronger. Your views on life are going to be different. The way your beliefs are just totally going to change after that. And that's not a bad thing. I think the person that I am now is a heck of a lot better than the person I was before my child loss. I'm a different person. I view the world differently. And people think that they have to hide that traumatic event or something bad that's happened to them in their life, that they think that they have to hide it, but you have to bring it with you. It's all part of who makes you who you are. And I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. That was very well said. So any moms out there or dads who you work with women, right? Or do you work with
Yes.
both?
Yeah,
Women?
I'm partial to women. I'm sorry, but yeah, I
That's
work
okay.
with women. I work with women, and I guess my theory with that is like I know exactly how a mom went through it. I probably could help a dad, but I know exactly living it with a mom and everything. That's obviously I'm a mom, so, and I've experienced it through a mom's eyes, so that's why I help only women.
Yeah, and my practice is mostly the same with the Heal Thrive Dream. We serve women. Therapy wise, I will see a few good men. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Evolved men who really want to work on themselves and change and heal. So, okay, so for a mom or a woman that's listening today, they feel like they can connect with you and they think that you would be helpful for their healing journey. What's the best way for them to reach you?
They can always email me at hello@lifeafterchild.com. And I spend a lot of my time on Facebook because I have a group over there, and my group is Women Surviving Child Loss. And then obviously I have the business page, Life After Child. And then I have Instagram. They're welcome to DM me. If they feel more comfortable with that, then email. And yeah, and we can go from there. But I think you hit something on the head. You said it correctly, felt connected to you. And I think people think that everybody can help them. Every provider can help them. But the person that helps you, you have to mesh with. They have to understand you. And I think that is one of the most important things for healing too, especially if they're looking for you for therapy and everybody else. They have to actually connect and somewhat feel bonded to them to actually move forward too.
I agree 1,000%. Yeah, well said. All right. Well, thank you so much, June, for being a guest on here today and helping both of our audiences get to know you better.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.